There's a pact among our top 50 on-air talents.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
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 Okay, let's try this again. I didn't realize my mic was muted. Okay, good morning, everybody. Hope everybody's doing well. My name is Erica Wade, and I am the manager for the Office of Small Business Opportunity. We're so happy to have each and every one of you join us today for our much needed conversation called Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. We've realized that this is such a good time to have this much needed conversation. So before we go any further, I wanted to take care of some housekeeping rules. First of all, I'm going to ask everybody to please mute your microphones out of respect for our speakers, and also that would help to eliminate any background noises. Also, we want this to be an interactive workshop today. So we really are going to encourage you to type your questions in the chat box. There are emojis. If during the conversation, if it's something that you really, really agree with, there's a thumbs up emoji, put the thumbs up in there. The questions will be monitored, and we'll make sure that our panelists get your questions and have them answered. Also, we want to let you know this is a two-segment event. So this morning, we're going to start off with our keynote chat with Mr. Harvey and Ms. Colette Holt. And then we have a really, really good, diverse panel that will follow our keynote chat. Also, I'm encouraging you, please stick around. You don't want to miss this. I want to recognize some folks that we have on the call. I want to recognize our county administrator, Mr. Brown, and also some other county administrators that's on the call. I want to recognize members, some of our partners from the City of Columbia. We have the City of Charleston, Ms. Ruth Jordan, thank you. We have some of our partners from our school districts and neighboring colleges, our chambers. Thank you so much for supporting this event. And also we have some of our own Richland County employees that's supporting us today. Thank you so much. And most of all, I want to recognize our small local business, our certified SLBs. Thank you so much. I want to recognize also our director, Ms. Chris Kiefer. Thank you so much, Ms. Kiefer, for allowing us to have this event. And also my mighty team of four who've put so much hard work into this. Ms. Cheryl Cook, Ms. Michelle Rosenthal, Ms. Margaret Jones, and also a special shout out to Global Core. Thank you guys so much for helping us to make this event a success. So without further ado, I want to introduce Mr. Leonardo Brown, who's our county administrator, that will bring some remarks. Mr. Brown, good morning.
Good morning, and I'll be brief in my remarks. I just really want to say on behalf of Richland County and Richland County Council, thank you all for joining us for this very timely topics and discussion. We believe that it's very important to tell our speakers, thank you for helping facilitate this dialogue and discussion on this morning. And again, I just want to really say thank you to all the participants. And because it's important to get to these discussions, I'm going to stop talking and let's get to it. Welcome. Good morning.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. We will now have Ms. Michelle Rosenthal, who will come in and introduce our keynote chat speakers. And then we will get into exactly why we're here to have our keynote chat. Ms. Michelle Rosenthal.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for being in with us. We are streaming live on YouTube. So just so you'll know, the first session this is the first session of two sessions when compliance meets reality. I would like to introduce our two keynote speakers for the first session. One is Ms. Colette Holt, the attorney at law. I love attorneys. Not many people get to say that, but I do love attorneys. I've worked with them for quite a while, and they are extraordinary. Now, Ms. Holt represents public agencies, private firms on issues related to civil rights, public contracting, and affirmative actions. She holds her Juris Doctor degree from the University of Chicago Law School. Secondly, Mr. Ron Harvey, a certified coach. Mr. Harvey is a native of Florida. He is a certified leadership coach, speaker, trainer, and facilitator. He is also the co-founder and vice president of Global Core Strategies and Consulting. Thank you, Erica.
Thank you, Michelle. So let's get to it. Ms. Colette Holt, welcome, Mr. Harvey. We're so happy to have you join us here this morning. So let's chat. So I have a question for both our panelists this morning. So our topic talks about diversity, equity, inclusion, and leadership when compliance meets reality. So when it comes to different programs, and you guys have traveled around the world, have worked with different government agencies, entities. So can you tell us what type of programs that you feel have been effective when it comes to diversity, equity, inclusion? Ms. Colette, I'll let you take it first.
Sure, I'll start, and good morning to everyone, and hopefully you can all hear me very well. And I apologize, we have a lot of animals in this house, and then they tend to sort of wander in and out of meetings as they see fit. So you may see the cats and the dog kind of, wandering around. But I think the most important thing in having an effective, at least supplier diversity program, I work almost exclusively on the contracting side, is the commitment of leadership. And so I was delighted that you have so much of your senior leadership team here, including the county executive, because you can get an awful lot done, even if you don't have a disparity study, even if you don't have a rigorous minority business program with goals and all of that. You can get an awful lot done if you have people that want to get something done. And conversely, if you don't, you can have pretty studies and ordinances and stuff lawyers do all day long, but it won't make any difference. And so I think the commitment of leadership is the most important thing. And that plays itself out in a couple of ways. One certainly is the directive clearly to staff that this is a critical issue for your organization, that you are going to look at everything that you do through the lens of its impact on diverse populations, how inclusive or exclusive the policy or the action might be, that you're going to evaluate employees, and I think this is very critical, for their performance in supporting those goals and being part of the solution. But the second way I think it plays out is also in resources. There's an awful lot of yakking these days about diversity and inclusion, and I don't know that there's a whole lot of doing some places. It's very easy to talk about your commitment, but one of the first things I want to ask a new agency client is, how many people do you have devoted to this function? Do they have good systems that they can work with? Have you given them the tools to be successful? Because if you haven't, then all you're going to be able to do essentially is just sort of jawbone people. If you're not measuring what you're doing, if you're not out there in the community conducting the outreach, if you're not measuring the results of your activities, if you don't have enough people to get the job done, then all the commitment in the world won't matter. So it's both messaging, leading by example, but also sufficient resources so that you can actually implement your policies. Erica, you are muted.
Mr. Harvey, would you like to jump in here? You're muted, Ron. We can't hear you.
Let me make sure are we good now?
Yes.
Awesome. Well, thanks first of all for allowing us to be here with you and support the entire community, and for everybody that's joined as guests today. And for the county putting this on. I think it's an important conversation because there are a lot of policies, and there have been a lot of policies written for a long time, since 1974, about diversity, equity, and inclusion, affirmative action, and there's a lot of compliance in place. But when you look at us as a nation, we haven't done really, really well at really turning those numbers around in a positive place. We haven't made a huge gain here, probably about 10%. And I can't think of any other program that any of us can think of that if you only achieve 10% in that length of time, you would measure it as success. And so I think that there are policies, but people impact policy. And so when you start thinking of, what Colette said is how's leadership, how are business owners, how's the community, how are decision makers, how are politicians really getting behind what's written down? And I think that's where the small business owners make a big impact. And in this particular area of ours, small businesses, and I see a lot of faces on here that are small business owners, we make up a huge part of this society, of this community, and taxpaying. And so regardless of the policy that's in place, I would say, how do we challenge ourselves to look at those numbers from a real place that all of us can have a conversation? That's with everybody. I'm a SLBE. There are policies in place that I wish that someday we would not have to use. Unfortunately, we're not there yet. And I look around at some of our audience, and Greg Hilton's on here, and so as a good friend of mine, a Caucasian male who's doing a phenomenal job in the community, we have to do certifications to have a seat at the table. That's one of the plans. That's one of the programs. Why is it that as a minority business owner, I still have to do a certification to prove that I'm a legit business? And Greg really doesn't. Why are we still at that place in America that women and minorities, other, Black or brown people still are required to do a certification to show that we're legit, that our policies are in place, that things are going well. So when compliance meets reality is I still got to be certified to get into the room. And Greg really doesn't have to. And I'm not hating on Greg. I'm saying that we need to look at the policy. Why are we still here as a country doing this?
Colette, you want to chime in on this?
Sure. Well, I think Ron obviously is making an excellent point about the special burdens that women and minority-owned firms have to endure, the extra certifications, extra steps in order to be in these programs. But the short answer about why we're still doing that is because the federal courts have told us we have to. We really are very hamstrung in a lot of ways by a 30-year series of rulings that have made it extremely difficult to have minority and women-owned business programs that are really targeted to the issues of race and systemic racism. And so we all have to go through that. I feel Ron's pain. At one point, our firm was certified in 17 states. So I certainly understand the burden that people endure with this. I wish I could save us all from this, but I can't, at least certainly not under the current jurisprudential structure. The courts are very concerned that people who may benefit from the programs are in fact legitimate, that they are small, that they are disadvantaged, and that there's not fraud. One of the things that I think we've sort of misfocused, and we try to learn as we go, was I think at least in the early days of these programs, and I've been working on MWBE deferred diversity type programs since literally 1990. And one of the things that we have been, I think, overly concerned about in some ways has been fraud. That we're always really worried about, are there front companies, are they false and whatnot, and not so interested in whether or not we got any results from the program. So, we don't want the tail wagging this dog here of certification becomes the be all and end all of these programs. And we don't ask, did anybody get any money? Did anybody grow? Were they able to add jobs and opportunities in our communities? And so I'm very interested these days in trying to measure those results more and kind of take some of the focus off of certification. Now, that said, no certification officer, including Ms. Wade, Ms. Rosenthal, any of them, want to be on the front page of the local paper about some MWBE fraud. I get that. If you are interested in MWBE fraud cases, I have an entire file. I'm happy to give you access to it through Box, and you can peruse it at your leisure. And we have hundreds of these cases. So it is a problem, but that's not the problem we're trying to solve. The problem we're trying to solve is unequal access, is unfair advantages, is increasing opportunity, not fraud. So I share Ron's pain. I don't know what to do about it though. And I'm certainly, I'll put it to you this way, I'm certainly not expecting the current makeup of the Supreme Court to be any more affirmative action friendly than it was in 1989, that's for sure.
Ron?
Yeah, and so I guess the question that as people are looking to send in some questions to us as well, because I think this is an important conversation for our community. Most people know me in this community. I'm an advocate for small business. I'm an advocate for minority business. And I think there still is an issue in our city, in our county, in our state, in our country, that there is a disparity. Let's be real. Let's have a real conversation. There is a gap as we look across. You know, COVID has shut down at least 42% of African-American, specifically African-American owned businesses due to COVID. The closest to that is a Hispanic population at about 23%. Our white population is about 12%. That's shut down because of it. There's something that's happening where when something bad goes wrong for our country, I get frustrated that African Americans lead the bad list. When it comes to healthcare, when it comes to education, when it comes to the wealth, affordability of housing, those categories that we all want to be fair in, we lead the pack of being the worst in, which I'm frustrated about. So I agree with the policies that we have to have something, but I don't know if the policy that we put in place actually get after what it should get after, because we're not changing the hearts of people with a policy. And until we change the hearts of people and across the entire world, it doesn't matter what policy we put in place, because I still got to go out and build these relationships. So yeah, I got it. I'm certified. I'm not knocking anybody. I'm not telling you not to get certified. If that's a foot in the door, we're certified. We're 8A certified. It took my wife and I a year, an entire year, to get certified through 8A, which means all of our taxes, all of our revenue, all of our policies, all of our procedures, all of our meetings. I don't know if any of my white counterparts, which are friends of mine, that have to go through a year-long process to get certified without a guarantee to get any revenue. That's a bad investment.
Yeah, I guess I'd echo that. One of the things that's been interesting is when you drill down in some of this data on what's happened since COVID, that certainly minority firms, especially Black-owned firms, have, as Ron said, failed at about at twice the rate. Quite frankly, you can kind of use this rule of two, sad to say, that if it's bad, Black people will have it twice as bad. And if it's something good, we're only going to have half of it. So, for example, the Black unemployment rate is consistently twice the white unemployment rate. Doesn't matter what the base number is. If the white unemployment rate is 10%, the Black unemployment rate will be 20. Conversely, I'm sure you all have heard about people not making the same dollar amounts, the Black wealth gap, where Black families have 1/10 the wealth of the average white family. And so these are issues that we brought into COVID, that we brought into an economic catastrophe, really. One of the things that's kind of interesting about the data that we have so far, and we're 6 months in from a researcher standpoint, which is what we do, this is baby data. This is like nursery school at this point. We don't really know what we have. But one thing we seem to be able to see is that part of the problem is that minority-owned firms are disproportionately represented in the industries that were especially vulnerable. So hospitality, personal services, restaurants, small grocery stores, those kinds of things were especially hit hard by the shutdowns and by the pandemic. Whereas there's some sectors that are just cranking along. Tech's doing well. Construction so far is doing well. Now we'll see what happens with that, both on the residential side as incomes fall, as people get behind on their mortgages, sort of new home starts should start to slow down. And on the commercial side, eventually projects that were already funded will be paid, and we'll see what happens. But I think one of the things that I would urge small business people to do right now is to take a hard, realistic look at what industry you're in. And if it's one that's particularly vulnerable, it may be a time to be rethinking what you're doing. You have to be nimble, you have to pivot. And so if you are in a service industry that requires high touch, this might be the time to rethink, maybe can you do things by Zoom? I never would have been able to be convinced to work out with a trainer on a computer screen. It took this to get me there. I thought I had to be there and have her yelling at me basically and telling me, come on, I know you can do it, in order for me to stick with it. Well, I'm actually kind of pleasantly surprised. She can still yell at me through the computer screen, and you know, you just have to get up and adjust it a bunch and all that other stuff, but it's really been fine. And so there may be ways to do things that you might have rejected or thought weren't feasible that you're now going to just have to adapt to. And I guess another sort of side comment about that is for the folks that are on the call or the Zoom, whatever, who are in government. This is your chance to really take a look at your own processes and see what you could do to streamline them. I'll give you a personal example that just gets to me, is people requiring all this stuff to be notarized. Why? Notarization is a holdover from when people were illiterate. And all the notary is doing is attesting that you were the person that signed the document, because if you signed it with an X, we'd need to know that. But it's burdensome for small firms. In California, where I used to live, it's up to almost $50 a signature now. And so ask yourself, do you need to do all this? This is your chance to get rid of paper. If you were getting resistance about going to electronic bidding, now's your chance, because there's nobody going to be there to collect all this paper. If you are not monitoring whatever you're doing in purchasing through an electronic system, go get one, because you're not going to be able to manage the paper flow because people aren't going to be able to come and give it to you. So, you know, in the immortal words of my former mayor, Rahm Emanuel, I'm from Chicago, never let a good crisis go to waste. And so here's an opportunity for you all to really think long and hard about, do I really need this piece of paper? Do I really need to have this meeting in person? One of the things that we've discovered, because we do interviews with minority and women-owned firms all over the country as part of our disparity study work, is that we're actually getting better attendance at interviews and meetings because people don't have to go anywhere. So that's been a benefit. And I think that's true about a lot of things. Community meetings, if you can just log on from home, you don't have to get childcare, you know, you can still make dinner while you listen. It just really, in some ways, frees up people in ways that I don't think we even understand what that's going to be yet because it's too new. So I do think that we have special problems as minority-owned firms. Sort of reminds me of something my grandmother, who was from Union, South Carolina, by the way. That's where my mama's people are from. We still own a house there. I spent all my childhood summers sweltering in a house with no air conditioning in Union. But she used to say, well, you know, when white America gets a cold, Black America gets pneumonia. And that's still true. And COVID is just another example of that.
So we have a question that's coming in from the through the chat. I'm going to let Greg Helton. I will unmute you, Greg. You will go ahead and ask your question.
Thanks, Erica. Hey, everyone. Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it. Colette, thanks for getting this thing started. So, my question, and for those that don't know me, I'm founder, co-founder, and managing partner with SoCo. We're a shared work community. We've got about 200 members, and we hang out with lots of different creative entrepreneurial types. My question is this: I feel like there's an absolute giant chasm of a hole when it comes to getting funding into the hands of talented founders of color, whether they're creators or whether they are, you know, building an empire. Obviously there's statistics that indicate this is a global and most definitely an issue in the United States. But my question is this: what different ways could we as a community come up with to raise some capital and deploy that capital into founders of color in our community in ways that could help them launch things? Because if I know anything, what I know is that talent really knows no color boundary, right? And ambition knows no color boundary. And I've seen just as many innovative, cool ideas from founders of color as I have from founders that are not Black or Hispanic. So what can we do about this? Yeah. It's an open question to the leadership and to folks on the call.
Yeah, Greg, first, thank you for putting the question, and thank everybody for having this conversation. I think we need to have in the community, and don't make it personal for anyone, and don't take it personal. It's just a conversation that we got to have. So I love the question, and I'll say, Greg, that question will be answered in real detail when the panel comes up, because we're going to have, Dominic, who's of the bank, and some of us that are really smart about this. That question is personal for me, and I'm passionate about it, Greg, because I actually have gone through it here in this community. I've actually bidded on a major federal contract, and that federal contract required me to have so much money set aside, if you will, a line of credit to even win the contract. Had nothing to do with what my wife and I had, and it shouldn't have had anything to do with what Ron and Linda had in the personal bank account. It was a business. And I can tell you that the major financial institution I initially went to, Greg, with everything looking great, I didn't get it. And even in that institution, someone internally pulled me to the side and said, hey, I can't really tell you why you didn't get it. I say, is it that you can't or you won't? He says, here's where I'll tell you to go at. And within 2 weeks, it was approved. Nothing changed. Application didn't change. Nothing changed other than someone inside linked me up with someone else inside and said, this is good. I'm sorry, we can't do it. And I got it done. But those things are real. And I say that, and I'm pretty transparent. I didn't get frustrated about it. I could have, but I know frustration doesn't serve me well, so I don't get frustrated. I try to figure out how to get around the obstacle. And so I think it's a valid question. What do we do for our community? And for all my African-American, Black, brown, whatever we want to call ourselves, we can't do this by ourselves. We're going to need people like Greg. We're going to need people that are of a different ethnic background to have these conversations and do these things that need to get done. It's unfortunate, but it's real. So we got to find a way to make sure our Black and brown or Hispanic or Latinos have a fair opportunity, because we're very talented. But we're not asking for a handout, we're asking for a hand up. We're asking for, can you get the door open for us to get to the table and help this community be great? I mean, we were great enough to build this country. Why can't we be great enough to build this city?
I guess I'll jump in for just a second. I think there's a couple ways to approach it, and I've seen some pretty good programs in a few places. So I think there are two ways to look at this issue, Greg. And one of them is, what can we do to help people come up to the traditional lending standards that lenders are going to impose? And that means having solid financials, to having good balance sheets, to having a lot of the controls in place that banks are going to want to look at. I'm not the least bit surprised to hear about Ron's experience with the federal contract. I mean, they're going to make you sign personal guarantees on everything. That's just kind of the way the business runs. And so we could help people on that side, I think, to become more ready to deal with the issues. Then I think there's another way to think about it, which is, how do we think of non-traditional lending? Are there ways that we can leverage, let's say, Richland County's dollars? Some agencies have what are called linked deposit programs, where if you have a contract with the agency, you can use that as collateral, essentially for credit financing to perform the project. I would say to people, do anything other than do factoring if you possibly can. Factoring is like the payday loans for businesses, and people just, they sink under them. Please try not to do that. But it is more trying to find sources of capital that are non-traditional. It's still going through the financial system, because if you don't do that, I don't know how you make it work. But it's leveraging government, very large corporations. Let's say and I'm only going to pick on BMW because I know they're coming and they're such a big employer there. The payroll they run through a bank there every week is a substantial amount of money. Is there a way for them to help their diverse suppliers, have access to that leverage? So it's really kind of two pieces to that, I think. But then the third thing I guess I would say is that I don't think we should just discount, just plain implicit bias. There's a report from the US Department of Commerce Minority Business Development Agency from a couple of years ago that looked at lots of studies. It's what's called a meta study, basically. And it looked at balance sheets and compared minority and women borrowers to white males. And what you saw was that for Blacks anyway, people with almost identical balance sheets, like Ron was talking about, couldn't get the loan. And so that comes down to the bankers talk about credit, collateral, and character, whatever that means. Character strikes me as where the problems will start to bump up. Is what do you think? Do you feel comfortable with somebody? And so one of the things to think through is how do we address the implicit biases that are involved in lending decisions? There's some interesting research that talks about credit card and unsecured loans. That when bankers can see you physically, when people, there used to be banks, and you could go to them, that Black folks got loans at much lower rates. That when it was all online and they couldn't tell who you were, then it started to equalize out. So I think we need to recognize and be aware of the role that implicit bias, it's not necessarily people are sitting around saying, we don't want to do business with Latinos, but they bring biases about who is going to be trustworthy, creditworthy, and who they want to deal with. And I just think that's real out there in the world. So I think we really have to attack it on all three fronts, getting people ready in the traditional system, looking for other ways to leverage capital, and then directly addressing the biases that are going to be built into human interaction, even in the financial system. There's nothing special about that would somehow lift it away from all the other issues that we face in our society.
Okay, we have another question in the chat box. It says, what are some concrete ways to ensure diversity, equity, and inclusion strategies become part of a company's culture and not just a check the box exercise?
Yeah. You want to do it from the legal side first, Colette, or you want me to go from my?
No, you should, because I don't really think this is a legal problem.
Okay. yes. Yeah, Colette said it earlier. I mean, before any policy, regardless of the policy, and even for small business, regardless of your mission statement or your vision, it starts with leadership actually doing the work. And so if you really want to make it something, it has to be measured, has to be held accountable, and people got to really want to do it, not because of compliance. Compliance doesn't change hearts. And if you really want to make it a part of a business, or you want to make it a part of your objectives for your organization or your goals are nice, but goals don't necessarily get met the right way. Because if you want to hire more diverse talent, what if I don't address the biases that Colette talked about of the person that's sitting on the hiring panel? I'm never going to hire more, even though the policy is in place, because I haven't addressed the underlying root cause. And so those people that are going to hire, the bank that I went to, there was something in between the character, nothing else. Everything on paper was lined up just like everybody else. And Colette said it really, really well. I do think we need to make sure, and this is not put up another platform or put another training or another class together and send all the African Americans and Black people to this class to get their books right. There are some other people that are not Black, Hispanic, or Latino. Their books are not right. They're still getting loans. Let's be clear about that. We're not the only ones that don't have our books right. But we got to be able to make sure that we hold ourselves accountable in our communities that we do have our books right. That's important because it will shut your business down. No bank is going to do it, but we're not the only ones. If you want to make sure diversity, equity, and inclusion is fair across the board, it starts with every one of us from top to bottom, specifically the leadership of that organization. And it has to be held accountable, it has to be measurable, it has to be observed, and it has to be tracked regularly for us to really do it. And it's almost a little insulting sometimes for me to say that we're going to give them 10% of whatever major contract that is. My question is, what you doing with the other 90%? Why are the people that are of any other ethnic background entitled to 10% of what we're doing in the city when we're spending more than 10% of our revenue in the city? That's a disconnect for us as a society where we have some policies in place. So, well, you got to do 10%. Most companies can do 10% with their eyes closed. What are we going to do to stretch them to do more than what a policy says? And I think that's what we got to get to. Say, what is the leader? Don will talk about this, when he comes on, so I won't steal his thunder. But what is the organization doing that they're not mandated to do? Because what I'm mandated to do is easy. If you really want to get after it from a diversity practitioner, I worked at a national agency in DC. In order for us to bring on women, which there weren't any in this intel agency at the high level, even if you look at CEOs across America right now, how many African-American CEOs do we have running Fortune 500 companies? And we're in 2020. Do the numbers. We had 5, we're down to 4. I mean, major companies. What's the disconnect for us? What are we really doing? Where the NBA, I'm happy what they're doing. My question is, once we finish all the marching and the protesting and all the activities, what is the real action to close the gap? All those things are relevant. They're very important, and we should be doing them. But I want CEOs to come to the table such as Dom and say, show me your numbers. What have you invested? What have you done? What have you shown on paper that you can account for that's closing the gap? Not pleasing the compliance, if you will.
Yeah, I guess I would just add to that if I understood where the question was coming from, that you need to figure out what people's leverage points are. In that sense, it's like anything else. We can appeal to their hearts and minds, and I'm all for that, because at the end of the day, that's where people are every day. And it's compliance and policies and all that other stuff. But if it's a corporation, it's a large organization, what are its values? Where can you impact diversity and inclusion through asking yourselves, where does that impact this entity? So one of the things I'm fascinated about is, and it's kind of calmed down now, but you all probably had it too, is the first month or two after the murder of George Floyd, my inbox was flooded by all of these companies telling me about how much they cared about Black Lives Matter and how much they cared about Black folks. I was like, okay, where were you, this time last week? And so that's all fine. But the question is then, what do you do with that? How do you leverage that into some real change? And I think if you're a consumer-oriented institution, one way to do that is to ask, what do your customers want? What's a good business decision? If you're in a business-to-business environment, who do you want to serve? How do you differentiate yourself? I'm all for making the moral argument, because I think at the end of the day, really that's what you have, is this right? Is this the right thing to do? But until I get there with somebody, I'm willing to work with them where they are. And I want to ask, how does this help you to achieve your objectives? And I mean the objectives beyond just the vision statement, the mission statement that we support Black Lives Matter and we support diversity and inclusion. I want to know, how does this help this entity to achieve its other goals? Because I'm old enough now and cynical enough now to think that this furor will pass. And what can we have built during this time that becomes more permanently embedded in institutions? The only thing I would add to what Ron said is his point about, it's 10%, but it means somebody else got the 90. I say, amen to that. I have been trying for 20 years to get a client to write a program that says, not our goal is to give 20% to women in minority-owned firms, but our goal is to give no more than 80% to everybody else. And I think when you flip that number around, suddenly it doesn't sound so overwhelming and radical. Oh, our goal is to give no more than 80% of our dollars to non-diverse firms? Well, okay, maybe we can get to that. So I'd love to reverse that paradigm, Ron. I would love to. So far, I have never gotten anybody to take me up on it, but I keep trying.
So I want to ask a question. Can you discuss how small business owners can find opportunities in the midst of all this chaos? Ron, take a stab at that.
Yes, I will start by what the conversation is about, is that small business owners have to also be mindful that diversity and inclusion is important at their level as well. Because oftentimes we're saying we want companies to pay attention to us. Well, we also got to look at our own firms and make sure that we have a diverse talent pool. And if you have a diverse talent pool, you won't get caught off guard so much by things that are happening, because you got people with different backgrounds, different understandings that's paying attention to everything going on. So I would tell small business owners, as a Black business owner, I'm not only trying to do business in the Black community. Of course, I'm going to take care of, and I care about it, and I'm passionate about my Black community. It's my culture, and it should be expected of me. And I love doing it. But I also want to connect with a Greg Hilton. Also want to connect with a David Powell. Also want to connect with a Jimmy. Those things are important because that's our community. So if you want to really get ahead of it, make sure that you are putting yourself in a room that doesn't look just like you, talk like you, and believe just like you. Because if you do, you're going to miss a lot of things, and a crisis will destroy you. I do a lot of leadership. Most leaders are not even trained in how to deal with a crisis. That's why we see what we're happening right now, because people are not taught in any school. When a crisis shows up, what do? Most people stick their head in the sand, hope it goes away tomorrow morning. Well, it's not. The generations that we're dealing with now, taking more risks than we're taking. Thank you. I'm glad that they are. Having tougher conversations than we had. I'm glad that they are. Holding people accountable more than my generation did. I'm glad that they are. getting rid of us having more conversation about race, diversity, women, equity, inclusion, sexual orientation more than we did. They're taking risks that we should have been taking. That's the reality of it, because until we get to a place where, Benjamin Franklin says it, until the person that's less impacted is just as frustrated as the people are that are impacted, it won't change. So I need Greg to be just as irritated about this as I am. I need Greg to be just as frustrated as I am, even if he's not impacted as much as I am, because he is directly impacted, because him and I are friends. So when I sit to the table, he feels what I feel because he can talk openly about it. And we've had this conversation before. Greg knows that. It's a problem. So how do we do it? Make sure you got a diverse team. Make sure you got people of all ages, all generations, all backgrounds, all beliefs, so they will catch things that you will miss. No matter who we are, we have what we call this experience blind spot. We're only used to what we have been accustomed to, and we miss so much more. You cannot run an effective business stand in your own community.
I guess I would add to that too, especially in these uncertain times, people cannot engage in magical thinking. It can't be it's going to be better tomorrow just because I want it to be. I see that a lot all over the place right now, that somehow we're going to wake up tomorrow and we're going to go back to the world that we had, because we're not. It will be different. How different and different in what ways, I don't think we really know yet, but it will certainly be different. So certainly one of the things I would urge small business owners to do is to get out here and educate yourselves about what the trends are in the economy. If you are not reading business publications, if you are not paying attention to that on the business news sites, I really urge you to do that. It may not be anything that excites you, but on the other hand, it's information that you really do need. When I talk to minority business owners, and they don't have any idea how the banking system actually operates, I think, oh, well, you're just going to get slaughtered if you go to a bank, right? Because they're going to run circles around you, and they're going to tell you stuff that I know is not true, but you don't know that. So you've got to get out here and educate yourself and just be realistic about what's going to happen. I think another thing that will be useful is particularly to network, come together, and organize as business owners. I don't know enough about the community there, about what business groups there are there minority chambers? Is there a chapter of the National Association of Minority Contractors? I don't know, but I think these groups are truly critical at this point. Think of it like any disaster. You turn to your neighbors, you turn to your friends for help. You're not going to be able to dig your house out of an earthquake alone. So you've got to go and network with your peers. These types of events are great. And I don't know what Erica's sort of plan is, for how people might continue this conversation once we're done this morning. But making sure that you are part of those organizations, because organizing is how you get power. If it's just an individual lone voice crying out there, it's very easy to not hear you. But if you come together as a group and say, this is what we demand, and you will pay attention to us, you're much more likely to be effective. So educate, be realistic, but organize, 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 to quote our former president.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Ron.
Yeah, and I think it's important. There are a lot of groups here. Here's what's been successful for me. Build authentic relationships and be okay with getting out of what you're about. Relationship equity is real. Most of the things I get done is because I built the relationship, not because I went trying to sell or prove myself, once you get to the table. I went in to build an authentic relationship. Here's who I am. Here's what I do. What do you do? And started working on how to support each other. And so I say it's super important if you really want to be able to work through this stuff, this is brand new to everybody that's on this call. None of us have been where we are today, where the whole world shuts down because of something that shuts it down. All of us are trying to figure it out, and we will never do it alone. I think we're put in a position that we needed to have this conversation. We needed to be able to come to the table and do this. If you don't have good relationships in this community, it's hard to get things done. I know what the sales process says, but you got to have a relationship. Not when you find yourself in trouble. You need to have that equity built up before you get in trouble. Yeah. Because once you're in trouble, you're reaching for straws and you're drowning and you're catching on to the first thing, and it may destroy your business. Louise will share this later about if you jump out of BMW, you better be ready to do business with BMW, because if you're not ready, it'll be the last time you get a chance to do it with them. And that's in everything that we do. So I say, what do I tell you to be ready for? Always be learning always be looking for where's the next opportunity, not what you're in love with. I'll use the country thing because we're in South Carolina. If your macaroni cheese is off the chain, I mean, it's good, it's fabulous, it's lovely. If I walk into your restaurant and I want rice and gravy, you better be serving rice and gravy or expect to be out of business. No matter how well you love what you love, don't drink your own Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
It will get you in trouble. And sometimes we get caught up in how wonderful we are and how fabulous we are, how many degrees we got and how long we've been in business and all. Doesn't mean anything today. There are a lot of wonderful companies out of business today because they got caught up in their own story. They got caught up in their own nonsense and they forgot to serve the people that are paying the bills. If you're going to deal with a crisis, know what the people that you serve need and what their customers need. If I'm working, with the county, I need to know what the county needs and the problems that their clients are having and solve that problem. Not just the county's problem, their client's problem. Go one level below that person that you're actually serving. You'll be amazed at what you can accomplish.
Thank you, Ron. So in about 15 minutes, I know we got some questions that's coming through the chat, but we will also have a Q&A session. But Ron, I got another question for you. So what advice would you give to our small business owners when they show up to these companies? What advice would you give them to get a seat at the table? What tools do they need to have?
Yeah, the first thing I would say, most people get caught up in tools, and I think tools are relevant and they're important. But I think the most important thing is be authentic and know what you have to offer. One of the things that's really frustrating, we're trying to find a video that BMW has, Louise is looking for, is how many times small companies like ours show up and they'll walk into the person, the big company, and they say, well, tell us what you do. And the company's saying, well, I do everything. There's nobody in the world does everything. Haven't met that person yet. Stop saying that. It's not true. Because now you're asking me to do the work to figure out where to best use you. It's not their responsibility to figure out how to use you as a small company. Mm-hmm. You got to be very specific. And some people may disagree with me on this statement. I'm getting to the place where I'm not totally using this value proposition statement on elevator pitch anymore. I think it's relevant. I think it's important. But when you're talking to BMW, you better know the 3 problems you solve and how you're going to solve them. And some of us got these nice pitches that sounds like a bobblehead. Sounds real good, but I still don't know what problem you're solving for me. Look at the company that you want to do business with. Before you walk in the room, do your homework. Look them up. Look who they're serving. Go to LinkedIn. Use all these resources to find out what are they concerned about, what are their issues, what are their problems, where are they getting stuck at. And when you walk to the table, you surprise them with how much you know about them. If you can do that, you get their attention. I have a good coach. I have a coach. Even though I'm a coach, I have a coach. She used this word, and the word is called, what does she use it? It is called intriguosity. It's trademarked, so it's not Ron Harvey's. I just use it, and I kind of use it on her. It's called intriguosity. Small business owners, when you're at the table, if you can create enough intrigue and curiosity for someone to ask you the next question, you'll be at the table longer than you anticipate. What happens is we don't create intrigue. People are looking at the watch saying, you're wasting my time, and I only gave you 30 seconds. You've already used 20 of those. Do your homework. What three things would I tell you to do? Do your work. Do your work. Be kind and have integrity. But small business owners, you got to do your work. So when you're at the table, please do your work before you get there. Don't wait till you get there to do your work. You need to know everything about Global Core before you sit down with me, before you take a meeting with me, and already know 3 things that I'm struggling with that you can say, hey, by the way, Mr. Harvey, I noticed your company is doing this, this, and this. I looked at your numbers. Here's what those numbers are. Here's what we can get you to. Here's how we can get you to this. Here's what that investment looked like. That's a business conversation. Have a business conversation. As great friends as Greg and I are, when we talking business. Trust me, it's about business. We love to have coffee, but Greg gonna give you 30 seconds. And if he realizes it's a waste of his time, he's looking at the next appointment.
Poor Greg, you're the poster boy this morning. I feel like I've gotten to know you a little bit. So if I ever get there, I'll go look you up. Yes. I guess the only thing I would add to that is if you're going to pitch to government, it's a little bit different, only in this sense that you have to understand the strictures within which government contracting officers operate. So you absolutely need to go in there. I love that. Go in there and tell them what problem you're going to solve, because an elevator pitch is better than most people do. You know, they kind of, And for sure, if you're going to get certified, please don't get certified in 15 different codes, because let me tell you what I think when I see that you do 15 things poorly. That's what I see. And someone who is not focused, does not know what their business really is. If you tell me you do catering and drywall and HR consulting, I'm going to know you don't do any of those, really. You have an idea that you'd like to, but you certainly don't have any real solid expertise that's going to help me. So if you're going to talk to government, I think it's very important to try to educate yourself as best you can about what restrictions those government contracting officers are going to have. They can't, unless it's the real small informals, and I don't know what Richland County's informal threshold is. A lot of places it's pretty low. But if it's an informal, you might be able to walk out of there with something. But if you have to formally bid, do educate yourself about exactly what that means. I see this a lot with small business people. If the bids are due at 2 p.m., 2:01 is too late. If they said it's a 20-page limit, 21 pages is too long. They mean this stuff. It's not kind of maybe I sort of feel like it or, whatever. If they say you need 5 years of experience and you have 4, you're going to get disqualified. Now, the tricks are during the question and answer period before the proposal or bid is due is to ask, will the agency accept a proposal from someone who only has 4 years of experience? You might get a response that says yes. That's what's called a formal bid addendum. There's all sorts of layers and structures and law around government contracting, and you really need to be cognizant of that. That said, it's why I urge people not to go to government as your client of first resort, unless like you do paving or something, right? Where that's your market. But people want to go to government all the time because they see it, they see Erica and Michelle and these folks, and they know they're committed and whatnot. But I'll give you just a real quick little story. My most recent favorite example of this is we were conducting the disparity study for the Texas Department of Transportation. Now, what do? They build roads and bridges. That's what they do. We had a woman come to a session and yell at me for an hour about why she wasn't getting any work from TxDOT. She's a caterer. What? Why are you here? Right? That's the most extreme example I can think of somebody who didn't understand what their market really was and how government operates. And so if you're going to go on the government side, it can be deep waters out there. They're going to require more capital. You're going to have to get bonded. It's a much tougher road to go. So I would start somewhere else. But if you're going to go to government, at least make sure you understand how that government functions. And oh, by the way, Richland County will be different than South Carolina DOT, than the state of South Carolina, than the city of Union, if they have a procurement department. They're so tiny, I don't know anymore, but they're all going to be different. So you cannot assume that because they did it this way in Spartanburg, that they're gonna do it this way in somewhere else. You just can't do that. So anyway, enough lecture about that.
Ron, you wanna chime in on this one?
Yeah, I would say, Colette did a really, really phenomenal job there. Really good information. And hopefully that everybody that's here that's in the small business are taking notes about this, because this information is very useful if you use it. What I share with you is oftentimes people come to these and they get information and there's no transformation because people are not implementing the things that need to be implemented. They think it's cute and it sounded good and it was catchy and it's not a feel good session today. This is a session that we want to talk about. How do we help you stay in business? How do you, weather the storm? How do we keep our community running? Because we need you to be in our community. Not because you just want to be in business, we actually need you to be in business. And a part of it is we got to be able to do business with each other better. So small business, if you're struggling at trying to keep your doors open, find someone else to partner with, let go your ego, let go your pride, say you're getting your butt handed to you, and find someone to connect with and build. If American Airlines and US Airways can combine, if Sprint can get together with T-Mobile and combine, there's no reason that me and another person can't build a business together so we don't go out of business together. Mm-hmm. And I think sometimes that gets in the way, especially, I don't want African Americans to get mad at me, especially in the Black community.
Yes.
We have the hardest time working with each other, and we got to get past that level of how to work together so we can stay vital in this community. We need you to be in this community, but we need you to also work together.
Yeah, I want to echo that. One of the biggest frustrations I have is how hard it is to get minority firms to come together in joint venture and team and work together. This crabs in a barrel issue we've got. We've got to get past that. Ron is right. If you see the largest companies, they'll put aside everything if it's the right business decision. So one of the things and it's hard, is to get your ego out of it and ask yourself, what's the best thing for my business? The thing I would just also say to folks is, and this is not really so much, it sounds like a pitch for lawyers, but you guys will show up to us once you've messed it up. So I would really suggest that maybe you show up before you messed it up. I get this, I don't do any work for really individuals. I haven't for a long time, but I used to get these calls and they're like, they're telling me I have to do this. I'm like, well, you signed it. Oh, I didn't think they meant it, but yeah, they mean it. So one of the things you may want to start doing is looking around for people that you may become partners with and explore that before the opportunity arises. Because the problem is that Ron and I might know each other, whatever, but by the time there's some solicitation, there's an opportunity, it's too late to put all that together. So start trying to build those relationships and go to an attorney and get a teaming agreement together. Maybe you don't use it. Don't be scared to spend a little bit of money under the theory that maybe it will help you later. But then you can be ready. I mean, when I see these giant construction companies, I'm talking international companies, Kiewit, Skanska, the folks that are multi-billion-dollar companies coming together and doing things in joint ventures. That tells me that there's no reason we can't do it. If they can pull it off, so can we. We can do anything anybody else can do because we have to do all that and deal with all this other stuff like Ron was talking about. So do be ready. Oh, we got somebody's screen.
Yes, awesome.
It's not mine, so I can't take you out of it.
Somebody.
Go to whoever it is, go to the bottom under screen share and hit that green button, click that, and it should take you out. I only know this because I've probably done 100 Zoom calls in the last couple months.
Like this, Yolanda West, is your screen that we're seeing?
Yes.
While she's figuring that out, are there any questions in the box for us, Erica, so we can use the time wisely?
Okay, because the shared screen is showing up.
Yeah, she can't get to it now.
I can't see the box right now.
Although, there you go.
There you go. Thank you.
Yeah, I was worried about Zoom crashing on y'all today because all the kids went back to school this week. And a lot of places Zoom has been crashing because it was really not designed to have 20 or 30 million people on it at the same time. So I'm glad that was your only technical glitch. We've got WebEx as a backup now because every school kid is on there, and so this is my moment to say how deeply grateful I am to all of you who are parents and who are managing through this. I have no idea how you are doing it. I have no idea. My hat is off to you. We have one client, she has a 4-year-old, a 3-year-old, and like 10-month-old twins. And every time I think I can't do this, I think about her and I'm like, nah, girl, no, just be quiet, stop whining. All you have to do is take the dog out. It's not that big a deal. So you parents, here's my hat off to you. Because I just don't know how people are doing this. I don't know. They're heroes.
So I have a question. What would you consider as a model diversity, equity, and inclusion model? Or does it exist?
Yeah, I would say that as a perfect model. I think it's based on the organization, based on where you are. There's so many variables to that. I think anything that you do when you look at a model that is better than what you did the previous year, that should be your goal. And I say this because oftentimes we compare ourselves to what other people are doing. And if you can make a 3% increase or a 2% increase, or you get more women or more minorities, whatever you were doing in the previous year, the model should be to improve. That should be the model, not because compliance said improve, because you care enough and you want to do enough to improve. So I know business owners on here that are doing it because it's what they want to do. That should be your model. For you to always do better and do it from a place of making a difference, not because you are required to or someone's going to shame you into it. None of us should have to be shamed into doing the right thing. You know, so that's, if you ask me from a diversity practitioner standpoint, we did the right thing because it was the right thing to do. What is that? That's what should be your model. That should be your moral compass for you to do the right thing. And quite honestly, some of us, people in our families or people that's close to us and friends, they're not ready for this conversation. Matter of fact, they want nothing to do with it. That's okay. I'll meet them where they are and I'll still respect them. But the people that are willing to help us do this work, those are the people I'm gonna sit down with and I'm gonna do that. I'm not getting wrapped around the axle of the people that don't want to do anything about it. And they do exist. I'm okay with that. And that's in every community, regardless of where you are, that exists. But I want to work with the people that care. And so my motto is, I'm gonna stay positive, I'm gonna do the work, I'm gonna stay kind, and I'm gonna do it with integrity. Let that be your model.
And the only thing I would add to that is if you are an organization, set yourself some metrics and measure against them. And if your objective is that we want to have a 5% increase in the dollars that we spend with Latino-owned firms, then measure that. One of the things I see on the more on the private sector side really than on the government side is that things are very, very mushy. They're telling me how great they're doing, like the $1 billion roundtable, right? You know, these big companies that are doing lots of business with minority-owned firms. Well, okay, but I want to look behind that, and you need to look behind your own numbers, especially because diversity and inclusion has been broadened, and it's not necessarily a bad thing, I just think it's a fact, well beyond the original intent, you know, as Ron was talking about, you know, back in the 70s and the 80s, to do something about the continuing effects of slavery. Now we have a very broad group of people, and make sure that you are focusing in on where you really have issues and be targeted about your activities. To just tell me you're doing great with women and people of color, well, okay, I'd actually like to unpack that. And so set yourself some goals for that and then measure. And if you're not meeting them, then be honest about why you're not. Is it lack of resources? Is it lack of commitment? Is it that the firms are small and weak and they need help? You know, ask yourself what your problem is, but do set yourself some metrics and measure against them.
Okay, so to our audience, if you have any questions, you can go ahead and type it in the chat. We're monitoring the chat throughout in the chat box. We're monitoring everything. So if there's a question, you can either raise your hand, type it in, we'll get it to you. We have a few more minutes. Just a quick reminder, this is a 2-segment series. We have a really, really good, energetic, and diverse group of panelists that's waiting to come on and bring you some more information. This has been so good, guys. By a show of hands or by a click of an emoji, thumbs up, has this been really, really good and informative for you? Can I get a thumbs up? Yes, I see them. I see the thumbs up going. I see the thumbs going up.
People have to know where that is.
You got to raise hand also, Erica. You got to raise hand, Christine Jacobs.
Say that one more time.
You have a raise hand from, I think it's Christine Jacobs. Raise her hand.
Christine Jacobs.
Yeah, she didn't put a question in, but I did see her hand raised earlier.
Christine, did you have a question? You can unmute your mic if you had a question. Okay, I don't see her anymore. I don't see her anymore. Are there any other questions? Somebody said they lost audio. You can hear me fine, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Do you have any more questions from our audience? This has been so good, so much good information. I know our small business owners have a lot of homework to do, a lot of reevaluations as far as their businesses are concerned. We covered ways to make yourself visible, you know, when it comes to trying to get a seat at a table. We talked about restructuring internal processes as it relates to diversity, equity, and inclusion. We got a question that just came in. Do you think unrepresented communities will ever truly get equal opportunities if there are always caps on the amount of funds they're able to receive when participating in contracts? Colette, you want to take that?
Yeah, I'll take that. And if I understand the genesis of the question, it is about the size restrictions and the personal net worth caps maybe that's what Ms. Horn is really asking about, because there's no restriction on the amount of dollars you can receive. You know, if I got a $500 million contract tomorrow, you know, if I could do that, which of course I couldn't, but there'd be no restrictions on that. So I think that's what you're talking about, is the restrictions on the size of the firm and personal net worth. That is a very hot topic out here in the government world. Now, you know, on the private sector side, like National Minority Supplier Development Council or the Women's Business Enterprise Network, the private sector groups that certify do not have size limits or personal net worth tests. So if you are in one of those programs, this is not really a problem for you. You can grow to be as big as you possibly can be and still be in the program. It's not true on the government side, because the Supreme Court and the federal courts are very concerned that quote unquote rich minorities not benefit from these programs. And I will leave that without comment. So it is a hot topic. We are doing some work now for the city of Chicago where we're trying to figure out what might be appropriate limits for that market. If you are familiar with, for example, 8A, you know, and Ron said, you know, about getting into the 8A program, these are nationwide numbers, and many of the larger communities really feel that they are too low to permit growth. So we're working on that. It turns out to be much more complicated than it sounds at first about what's the right rubric. How do you think about this problem? What assets should you count and how much should you be able to have? What does it mean to have quote unquote sufficient access to capital in order to be successful? Does that vary by industry? One would think it would, but these are, you know, sort of blanket standards. So it is really a problem. I'm not sure what to do about it. The courts have kind of boxed us in with some of this, but we are trying to think it through. So if anybody has any ideas about that, I would be delighted to hear from you. And I'm gonna, if that's okay with Erica, I'm gonna type in my email address into the chat box, so that if people want to get in touch with me, I'm happy to hear from you. It may take me a couple days to get back to you because I get easily 200 to 300 emails a day now. So it just takes a while, but I promise. And if there's any information I can give you or help that I can share with you, I'm happy to do that. So if that's okay with you, I'm going to type that in there and then people can have that.
Yes, thank you so much, Colette. Ron, you want to chime in on this?
I think Colette did a phenomenal job at that. I mean, so she's more of an expert at having that conversation than me. So great job on answering that question. And I think it's a very relevant question.
Okay, thank you. So if we don't have any more questions, we will go ahead and say thank you so much to Ron and Colette. Again, this has been really, really good. This has got us hyped up now for our second segment that's coming up. Like I said, we have a really good, diverse panel, energetic group of folks. We have Ms. Trey Taylor, who's going to be moderating. Thank you again, guys. I will encourage you to stay on, and if you want to interact with our panelists, throughout the panel discussion, you're more than welcome to do so, Ron and Colette. But once again, on behalf of Richland County, we want to say thank you so much for supporting our
Thank you.
Thank you.
This was a lot of fun. So good luck to everyone. Eric, I'll try and I'm gonna get off but mute and everything. I'll mute, but I'll be listening. So holler like my name or something if there's something you really want me to pay attention to, but I'm gonna be listening. So thanks to everybody. And you know, take care, stay safe and healthy, please. Good luck with all of you in your endeavors. And it's fun to see a bunch of people from South Carolina, my first home, and I've still got relatives in Spartanburg and Honeypath, if anybody even knows where that is. It's so small, I'm not sure. It's small compared to Union, so but we still do have folks in Honeypath. So much love to South Carolina.
Thank you so much. So now we're going to go into our second segment. Before we do that, we're going to hear a little bit about what does the Office of Small Business Opportunity, what type of services we provide. So I'm going to ask Ms. Margaret Jones, who is our compliance administrator, to go ahead and give an overview. And then we will have Ms. Cheryl Cook to come on and introduce our moderator, and we will get into our panel discussion. So I encourage you to stick with us. You don't want to miss this good information that's coming up in our second segment. Ms. Jones?
Good morning. I apologize for the lighting. My name is Margaret Jones, and I'm the Certification Compliance Specialist for Office of Small Business Opportunity. We know to grow a business, you need opportunity. And through our Office of Small Business Opportunity, Richland County ensures that small and local business have significant opportunities to compete and participate in contracts. The department goal are to focus on advocating, connecting, and qualifying small businesses to become more competitive in the business market through a small local business enterprise certification program. The program is race gender neutral and non-federally funded. We provide avenues for our SLBEs to compete and participate for countywide contracts in 6 different industries. To be eligible, you must be located in Richland County for at least 1 year prior to your submission of your application, or have at least 25% of your employees live in Richland County and be independently owned and operated. The certification application is an online application process. And for more information and to find out if your business is eligible, go to www.richlandcountysc.gov/OSBO or contact us at 803-576-1540. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. And now we'll turn it over to Ms. Cheryl Cook, our Assistant Manager, that will introduce our moderator for today.
Thanks, Erica. Can you hear me?
Yes.
You can hear me? Okay, good. What a dynamite dialogue we just had with Ron and Colette. I really enjoyed it. And I know all of our businesses learned a lot. And 2 things I want to say. Always remember you're learning and do your work. If you think that dialogue was good, we have an amazing panel that's coming up, a very diverse, amazing panel, and a dynamite speaker. I know a lot of you that's on the call right now already know her, but I'm going to give you a little insight into who our panelist is. She is Miss Trey Taylor. She is an award-winning broadcast professional who has over 30 years covering entertainment, news, and information in 6 states and 3 countries. Trey has reported on such memorable events as 9/11, the Emmanuel 9 tragedy, Confederate flag removal, the inauguration of 3 U.S. presidents, the Tom Joyner Fantastic Voyage Cruise for 5 years, Hurricane Hugo, the Essence Festival, and the list goes on and on and on. Plus various news and day topics, so much more. Among her many accomplishments and awards for supporting events, topics, and causes through her community outreach and media platform over the years, Trey also received the Star Award for Best Radio Newscaster in South Carolina for 3 consecutive years. You go, girl. Currently, Trey has launched Coping with COVID, a timely 1-hour show that provides updates on the pandemic and information to help you strive and survive COVID-19. The show airs Monday through Saturday from 2 p.m. on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Ladies and gentlemen, OSBO newest and wonderful friend, Miss Trey Taylor. Trey.
Thank you, Cheryl. Thank you, Cheryl. I appreciate it. Hello, good afternoon, everybody. As Cheryl said, it has already been a dynamic conversation. And I know with these panelists, we're going to continue to have an open, honest, frank dialogue. So we encourage you not only to listen, but to engage. And we'll definitely get to some of your answers. So let's start with our panelists. I see Mr. Chu down there. Jimmy Chu is an award-winning licensed engineer. He was born in Taiwan and is now a resident of Lexington, South Carolina. He's founder and president of Chow & Associates, an engineering firm specializing in civil, structural engineering, land surveying, asbestos, and lead paint survey. Mr. Jimmy Chow, thank you so much for joining us. Did you know they're Jimmy Chow shoes? I'm just asking if you knew that. Is that you? Are you the shoe guy? We know you're not. I'm just making a joke. Oh, we can't hear you, Mr. Chow. While you figure out if those are your shoes, you may want to come off or mute. Louise Connell is our next panelist. She's been at BMW since 1992 and is currently the Supplier Diversity Manager. Since she's been there, she's helped launch the company's successful Tier 1 Supplier Diversity Matchmaker Conference that has helped BMW achieve their objectives to increase their year-to-date minority spend with both Tier 1 and 2 suppliers. She's increased outside awareness of BMW's commitment to supplier diversity and increased the company's community service outreach. That's our next panelist, Louise Connell. Dr. Kenston Griffin is one of the nation's most sought after keynote speakers, a best-selling author, and a top performing trainer and coach. He's internationally known throughout corporate education, executive coaching, federal, judicial, and nonprofit organizations for his award-winning inspirational presentations. He's the founder and CEO of Dream Builders Communications, which provides training and development in the areas of leadership, organizational effectiveness, academic enhancement, and board development and executive coaching. That's Dr. Kenston Griffin. Felicia Rue Howard has had a successful 25-year career at Dominion Energy. She's currently the VP of Gas Operations. Now, prior to her current role, she was responsible for starting up the company's portfolio of energy efficiency and conservation programs. That's Felicia Rue Howard. And Dominique came to Optus Bank 3 years ago. And since he's been there, Optus Bank has reached over $100 million in assets. That's up from $47 million, while returning to consistent profitability over the past 6 quarters. Non-performing assets have declined to less than 2%, while percentage of loans benefiting underserved communities and minority-owned assets have exceeded 90%. Those are our panelists today, ladies and gentlemen. And again, we're going to have a great conversation. And we're going to start with you, Mr. Chow. You are a renowned professional in your field. Can you please share with us some of the barriers that perhaps you have encountered, and more importantly, how you've overcome them?
Well, thank you, Trey. I wish, again, the I am Jimmy Choo. I can make beautiful shoes for you.
I do too.
But unfortunately, I'm not. I'm Jimmy Chow. I'm the engineer. And I'm so glad you asked this question, because this question really struck my chord. I've been in business for 33 years. And through all those 33 years, we are trying to develop a business. Our biggest challenge is what I call is a mindset. But as Ron said, it was the people's heart. The people's heart is our biggest obstacle, because whenever we are approaching our client, we will find they either did not agree with the inclusion concept, or they did not think that we can do as good as job. For those of you who may not know, the selection process for the architect engineer in federal and also in the state of South Carolina is based on qualification. So in other words, even though we can do it a whole lot cheaper, they don't care. They cannot even enter into discussion about a price. They select the engineer based on the qualification. And some of the key criteria for the qualification are qualification of your personnel, the previous experience, and your past performance with the agency. So as you can see, all those 3 criteria can be very, very hurtful for small and minority business, especially when you struggle to establish your business. How would you have the track record? How would you have enough people compete with the big company have a 500 engineer? We only have 2 engineers. So all those kind of, it looks to be fair, but actually is inequality and hurting the small and minority business. And what we have heard, many times are the people says, well, you are the only qualified minority company. We cannot give the job to you because there will be no fair competition. That's against the procurement code. Or we have people said, here, look at the selection criteria, and none of the criteria said, it says qualification, it says past performance, it says, the previous experience, but none of the criteria says we are given advantage to the minority company. And so, they actually say, I cannot give you special consideration because that's against the procurement code. So they find all kind of excuse or reason for not including us. The worst kind I have ever heard was, you are not the right kind of minority we're looking for. And that's really, really the worst, the things and most dangerous, in my opinion, because we minority are ended up with our disadvantageous position because we are minority. And those people, they are further trying to drive wedge in between among us. So they will divide us and conquer. And that's something I feel very, very concerning. And as you all know, Asian American is 5.6% of the American population. So we are definitely a small the population. But by dividing the minority groups, they will weaken us. As Ron and Colette says, people, we need they put our resources together. We need to be united together so we can make a difference. But anyway, that's some of the things that we have experienced. I'm glad we have this forum to exhaust my frustration on this topic. And the way we did try to overcome all this is, I refuse to give them satisfaction. I would refuse to be squeezed out. How do I do that? Number one, I make sure I'm fiscally responsible. Every dollar of money that I make, I put it back in the business, put in the reserve. I live off with my wife. Thank God I have a good wife. And so I put every dime in the back into the business so I can sustain, so I can be there. And so that's number one. Number two, Colette, also has mentioned that networking. People do business with the people that they knows you.
Yeah.
They first got to know you. So we attend all kind of networking trade show. We even make appointment, go to visit them and to get for them to get to know us. And third thing is, we know it's hard for compete to give us big job because they don't believe us to begin with. And so a lot of agencies, they have so-called the small contract, as Colette says, it's called informal contract. It's a small amount. I just then give us opportunity. Let us see what we can do. So once we are seeking that opportunity, we make sure we deliver. I think that's another important thing. We got to deliver. We actually, a lot of times, I don't even care I make money or not. I make sure I deliver 110% what I promise I will do. And so I will take a long time to build up the confidence and build up the relationship. That's one thing I want to emphasize. Doing the deliver is very, very important because it is hard for us to get the first opportunity to get on the door. The minute we fail, not only we lose the opportunity for us forever, but you also losing the opportunity for the minority company. And the people will say, see, last time I gave this minority company a try, they failed us. We got so much trouble, so let's don't do that again. So that is very, very important for us to seek every opportunity and to give 100% what you got, even give 110% of you get.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chow. We appreciate it. It's so interesting that you said that you are obviously, being discriminated against, and that on top of that, you're not even the right minority, so, that's just so interesting to hear, because I don't think we think of Asian Americans or Asians, as being within that pool of people that would be discriminated against. I think we probably think African Americans, Hispanic, and certainly women. So thank you for sharing that. Ms. Connell, I'm going to go to you now, if you don't mind. As a BMW supplier diversity manager, can you please tell us what BMW's vision and strategy is for small and minority suppliers?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, first I have to say to Colette and Ron, kudos. I was over here, and if I could go, hey, yeah, that's right. You know, they gave so many great pointers that I hope everyone listened to, because they were important for corporations as well. But for BMW, supplier diversity is important because it provides products and services to emerging consumer markets. And interesting, I had read that at the Department of Commerce study, the growing majority population will account for as much as 70% of the total increase in purchasing power from 2000 to 2045. Guys, we're halfway there. And so for us, that's very important that our products are representing our customers that we are having. And so that's why it's such a driving force behind our diversity program. I was thinking back to what Colette had mentioned earlier about the government. One of the things I want most people to understand, when big corporations like a BMW and other automotive OEMs have a diversity program, it's not because we're forced to do it. Governments do not regulate our spend. So we do it because we know it's the right thing to do. We know that the market for our suppliers can be more flexible when we're dealing with minority and women-owned and veteran-owned companies. So I think that's important for everyone to understand about corporations, that we are doing it because we want to do it, not because we're being mandated.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Ms. Howard, we'll go to you since we're kind of in corporate and talk about Dominion Energy. What about your diversity spend goal? How is it over at Dominion Energy? I think you're on mute, Ms. Howard.
Says I'm not on mute. Am I unmuted?
You're unmuted now. Yes. Thank you.
Oh, okay. All righty. Okay. Very good. Well, thank you. Good morning to everyone who is participating, and good morning to the other panelists. Dominion, so I'll echo what Louise was just saying in terms of, you know, a mandate to engage diverse suppliers. That's not the case with Dominion Energy as well. So one of the things that we have recognized is that there is a real business benefit to having a diverse supplier. So it's not because it's the right thing to do kind of thing. It's not because it's a government mandate, but because there's real value in engaging with folks who in many cases look different, but think differently, have different backgrounds, offer a variety of perspectives, bring a lot more to the table than if we always, you know, went to the same kind of go-to scenario. So we're very committed to increasing our diversity spend, and a lot of that is laid out in our sustainability report, which you can find on our website. But we have seen an increase of 60%. About $3 billion in increase in diversity spend over the past several years from 2013 to 2018. So it's been a significant part. Not only are we promoting diversity amongst our suppliers, but throughout our organization. So who we recruit and hire, how we retain people, we see it as a significant advantage and a way to create innovation in our company.
Yeah, thank you. Dominique, I want to ask you, it said in the bio, you've been here 3 years working at Optus Bank. The financial industry obviously has a systematic disparities. Can you tell us how you have worked to close that gap over at Optus?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Trey. So let me start by sharing some good news first. So we know the statement you just made, if you had made that statement about a year ago, it would have been viewed as controversial. Today, no one argues with it. So I've been doing lots of recent interviews with Wall Street Journal, American Banker, a lot of these companies that are now have joined forces and are investing in Black-owned banks and minority businesses. And the question that I receive is frequently around, so, you know, why is there a need to have unique diverse institutions, financial institutions with minority ownership and focus on serving underserved communities. And if I had answered it, a year ago, I know I would have gotten pushback. But today, the question is, one of the questions I received of American bankers, does redlining exist? Is there this disparate access to credit? And we had some folks talked about it earlier today. The studies that have been done, we have essentially blind study. 2 loan packages go out to different banks, and one has an ethnic name, one has a privileged white name, right? So what's the response rate? Well, it's huge to vastly different response rates based on just the name on the loan application. If it's so we know the implicit bias and explicit bias exists in a radical way. That but the good news is we're not getting pushback anymore of making that point. No one can argue that point credibly. Of course, there's some people argue it anyway. The second piece of good news, I will say that we've mobilized some movement, and I know Dominion and BMW, there are a lot of companies that have been genuinely committed to this space for decades and are doing a great job because it is actually driving their bottom line. In fact, we know that in the banking sector, if you have diverse boards and management, the return on assets, a key benchmark for bank performance is your return on average assets, is actually higher for banks with diverse boards and diverse management. And that's been consistent over the last 50 years. So those are the good news that we see. Here's the bad news is that that banking, even if it's 100% mission focused, I mean, the focus, our drive to close the racial wealth gap is in our DNA. And the bank was founded 100 years ago by African Americans. It's still over 250 shareholders. The majority of them are African American. We tend to keep it that way, protect it that way. We're very proud of it, but we still have to follow basic banking practices, right? So one point I wanted to lift up is the way we address the disparities is we don't jeopardize our credit quality. So if someone comes in and they suffer the systemic disparities, such as lower net worth, lower access to credit opportunities historically, which then leads to lower access to credit opportunities today. They have lower credit scores because of systemic issues. They may not have inherited the wealth like their white counterparts. So they come to us in a weaker financial condition by no fault of their own. But needless to say, we may not be able to help them, okay, because they don't meet the basic criteria that are just basic sound banking practices. However, what separates us and other mission-driven institutions, which goes to your question, what can we do about this, is we work extra hard to make deals work that others won't. Right? So we don't sacrifice credit quality because we don't want to lead with mission and kill the margin, and then yet another black bank disappears, which is today, by the way, we have less than 20 African-American owned banks in the country. Okay, and their combined assets are less than 5 billion, right? There's a Hispanic minority bank in Houston, Texas, that's 40 billion in assets. So if we don't want to be one of the victims of systemic disparities, we have to make sure we have a diverse customer base. We're managing our credit. But one thing that separates us, and what I think every institution is starting to do now, which is a wonderful awakening, that it does take a little extra effort. You don't have to sacrifice the basics of good sound banking practices, but if you just spend an extra hour with that customer, if you just get to know them, you can close some of the gaps. Now, I will say, sadly, there are days where I leave and I'm so disappointed in myself that we could not make a deal work because I really wanted to, and I know the customer was a good customer, but sometimes you just can't make it work. But I will say 50% of the time or more, if you just are intentional about making sure that you set aside your biases, and by the way, those biases cut across racial lines, socioeconomic lines, it does not matter. I've seen it both. African-American loan officers and white loan officers will have biases that they bring to the table. And so if we can set those aside and build a culture like we have built at our bank, where every person that leaves our doors needs to leave better off than they came in. Even if you don't extend them credit, we have a duty because we're community accountable. to our shareholders and our communities and everyone, many folks on this call bank with us and support us. So we make sure that we leave them better off than they came. So imagine if you could scale that across the entire industry, where corporations like Dominion and BMW and others are the leaders and are followed by other corporations. This world will be a very different place in 20, 30, 50 years.
Yeah, you make such a good point, Don, because you're right. You said it yourself. You have to be intentional. You have to do these things on purpose because, as you said, we know that across the board, discrimination is happening. And but if as you say, like your bank, like Optus, like BMW, like Dominion Energy, if you make it a practice to do it on purpose, for the purpose of providing some equality, some equity, some fairness where there is none, then that could have a great domino effect. Thank you for your answer. Kenson, I want to get to you now and ask you how you have leveraged other minority companies with your company, Dream Builders, to build a successful organization. And we know that collaboration is so important.
First and foremost, thank you for hosting us. You're the hostess with the mostest and all the great things that you're doing today.
Thank you.
And
thank
to
you.
Erica and to Ron and Colette and the entire planning committee. When you start talking about Richland County and Office of Small Business, I want to commend you for all your hard work. And then my friend and fellow board member, Louise, is an awesome leader. Many times corporations talk the talk. But in my opinion, the reason that BMW can talk the talk is because of the person that you heard from in Louise. So I want to commend her for all of her continuous hard work. So when you think about collaboration, collaboration is everything. And I still consider us a small business, but we're in 24 states. And many people say, well, how are you a small business in 24 states? Because I have to leave this call and get on another call as soon as I finish this call. So that's how you know I'm still a small business. But Ron is a prime example. Ron and I, first of all, got to know each other. And that's very key if you're thinking about collaboration. We started finding out what his values are. What is his family's values? What is the vision of his company? What is his capability statement? In old school terminology, my grandmother would call it courting. We started courting each other. And then I learned various things about him before I even thought about collaboration. Then we looked at some projects that we both already had independently before we began to talk about us collaborating on something collectively. Leaders, please hear that. We looked at things that we were both doing independently before we started talking about collaborating collectively. Then we looked at, well, what was his strengths? What were his areas of growth? What are our strengths? What are our areas of growth? One of our strengths happens to be that we have a pretty large team. One of Ron's strengths is he's AA certified. He's a veteran. His wife owns a business. So there were things that he could go after that we couldn't, but there were things that I had capacity that people could research RFPs, write for different things. And as a result of that, then we partnered with corporations like the BMWs and like the Dominions and said, this is not your RFP, but do you mind looking at this to see if it was yours, would you assess and consider us as one of the vendors just to get an interview? Because if we could get an interview, we knew we could win the bid.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. And Ron and Colette talked about that in the first session, that collaboration is key. And you make such a great point, Kenson, that, you just can't go into somebody that you just met or that you don't even know and start talking about business. You've got to get to know them first. Do you even want to do business with them? Is there any synergy there? So I love your analogy of courting. You got to date somebody first before you want to marry them, right? That's right. What they say. I don't know. Mr. Chow, as a minority small business owner, what advice would you give to other small businesses in leveraging opportunities and resources? And Kenson just talked about, leveraging.
Well, thank you, Trey. It was interesting. You're talking about that you have the date, then get married. But in the ancient China, people don't date, they just get married.
Well, maybe we should adopt that and maybe I'd be married by now.
Oh, You can leave on me. I can help.
Okay, all right. I hope you, what's your wife gonna say about that?
Oh, not me. I'm sorry.
Okay. Let's get it straight.
Well, I've been in business 33 years, and so I got a couple of advice for other small business. And the number one is always on my mind is physically conservative. You got to stay in business. You need to survive so people have an opportunity to do business with you. I remember when I first started, I had even hard time to even get a $3,000 loan for get my first 80 computers. And so I pretty much have to proven to the bank I don't need the money before they can loan me the money. And so I still can remember my frustration. I said, if I can show you I have a $3,000 worth, do you think I need this loan? I can just go ahead and buy myself. Anyway, so that's something I have learned the biggest time. Make sure you have enough money to survive the business. Out of the 33 years, the longest time I've been going without getting any new business is 3 months. It took 3 months. The phone is not ringing. It doesn't matter what I do. I just cannot get a client. And so I've been preparing ever since then. I make sure I have enough preparation so the company can survive 3 months without any income. And I still practice that today. I don't take money out. That kind of reserve I don't touch. I just assume it's not there. And so that strategy, help us survive any kind of up and down of business. So that's the first advice, to be physically conservative. Second things, target the marketing of the targets, knows your targets. As Ron has said, people go into the business. Oh, not Colette said, people go in there. The people ask, "What do you do?" We do everything. No, that is really, really wrong idea. You need to be focused, because the buyer, they don't have time to listen to all your things. You need to be laser focused on what you're going to sell to them. If that company procure building the construction, I go in there to tell them I'm such a wonderful bridge builder. I'm wasting my time. It doesn't matter. I'm the leader of my bridge business. That's what they want to procure. So know what they want. Before you go in there to sell them, don't waste their time. And another thing is knows the procurement code. As Cora says, that we do a lot of the business for the government. They have a very, very restrict rule. You need to know what's their rule. So in the very beginning of my time, I keep on submit a proposal. I keep on failed. And then I finally later on I find out I did not respond to what they were asking. And some of especially the government the agency, they are very, very strict. They have a list of the things to check off. You need 5-year experience. You have 4 years. They ask you. They say they want you the business to be 50 miles. You're 51 miles. They ask you, and they want you the 20 pages. 21 pages. They ask you. They want you to ask what is your project manager's name and their qualification. You left that out. They ask you. So you got to, right now we become very, very strategic. Whenever we have a procurement, we put it aside. We actually check every single the mark, make sure we are responsive. Okay, and that's very, very important. And the next things I do, we have been told you are the only qualified company. We don't have a competition. So as Ron said, get rid of an ego, team up with some other the minority-owned company. Sometimes not even team up. I have a procurement opportunity. I will make sure I notify some other minority-owned business. Tell them, hey, this is opportunity. Let's go after this together. You may think wow, you invite your competition, but no, that's not. Because if we do that enough, eventually we all benefit. So make sure you get rid of an ego to cooperate with your other fellow minority company. And the last one is I want to emphasize 100%. We got to deliver. don't make excuse. Says, okay, well, because we are this, we're nobody interested in your excuse. Okay, get it done. Get it done. Doesn't matter what it takes. Get it done. Because after you get it done, then people, may have a chance that you can listen to your pet peeves. But before you get it done, nobody cares. So get it done.
Yeah, thank you so much. Your 4 tips: fiscal responsibility, attention to detail, teamwork, collaboration. We keep hearing that over and over, and make sure you deliver, get it done. Thank you so much. Those are the 4 child principles, ladies and gentlemen. Louise, we keep hearing so many great things about you and BMW. Kinston shouted your praises. Does BMW have a goal that they try to reach every year for minority suppliers?
I try to unmute. I was like, yes. And first I have to say thank you to Kinston for that very nice shout out. Thank you, kids. I owe you big time. Thank you. My phone was about to die, so I was getting the cord. Yes, BMW has goals, and maybe to explain, sometimes I think we covered a lot of this earlier, is finding companies that we can do business with. If you're putting parts on our car, there's certifications outside of being a minority or woman-owned, but you have to be TS 16949 or an ISO 9001. So all of these are important. So BMW struggled initially with how are we going to grow our minority business. It was important to us, but we didn't know how we were going to grow it. Hence the start of our Supplier Diversity event. And so we put on this conference. It would have been 9 years this year, but since we had to postpone. But what we found is that if our minority and women-owned companies go to our tier suppliers first, it helps them to start building their capacity. Just what Jimmy was just talking about, if a company is concerned about your capacity and your capabilities, and you have only 2 people, but this project we know will take 20, then you're not going to have the capacity. And I had shared this with Ron. BMW can bring you on as a supplier as quickly as we can take you out of business. And you don't want that. And we don't want that. We want to ensure that when you come on board with us directly, that you're successful. The other thing is that people have to realize, they always say, oh yeah, but I want to do business with BMW. Well, the other supplier's money is the same color as ours. It's green. So just go to our suppliers and get your foot in the door. And now you've built that capacity and that trust with BMW saying, hey, I do this and this for our suppliers. I can do this for you. Just back to what Ron had said, it is very much easier for you to understand what our issues are. If you've already been working in the automotive segment with these suppliers, you can come back and say, hey, I know you, BMW, you have this problem. This is how I can solve it for you. Ron was 100% correct in saying, know what the problems are. Don't come in saying that you can do everything. I think Colette brought that up earlier. I thought that was perfect, talking about, hey, I can do catering, I can do building, I can do. Well, no, that's not what we want either. We want somebody that has the capacity and the capabilities to service our company.
Yeah, I want to ask you a follow-up question, Louise. Thank you so much for your answer. Other than the obvious, which would be automotive's parts, what are some of the other areas that you might be looking for a vendor, a minority vendor at BMW?
Thank you so much for that question, because that is such an important question. A lot of people, I have gone to several events as well, and they say, well, I don't do automotive parts, so I guess I won't come. So your question is perfect, because we are like any other company. We still buy toilet paper. We still have printing needs. We still, we need forklifts. We need, there is just, if you can think of it for any company, BMW needs it as well, not only for parts for our vehicles, but just to run our facility. So thank you. That was an excellent question.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, Felicia, what about over at Dominion? What are some of the specific diversity and inclusions initiatives that Dominion currently has?
All right, I think I'm unmuted now.
Yes.
Yeah, we have several initiatives, and our supply chain group manages those initiatives primarily. But some of the things that I'm aware of and that you'll see reflected in our sustainability report have a number of matchmaking events which are intended to match employees with local businesses and help them understand what kind of opportunities there are for doing business with our company. For us to understand more about what they're doing. So much has already been said about networking and collaborating with other folks. So we participate in a number of events around in our local communities and through other associations and organizations that give us an opportunity to meet some of those small business owners and for us to learn more about them and vice versa. So those are a lot of the ways in which we are try to have a presence in the local community by offering events that we sponsor and organize on our own, as well as participating in those that are hosted by others.
Now, how are you handling that now that, COVID has kind of shut down anything except for this?
Yeah. So, well, the thing about being an energy company is we're open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. So COVID-19 or any other thing is not going to, it had to be something I can't even think of what it would be that would cause us to not be focused on continuing to deliver electricity and natural gas. And so in a very short period of time, we transitioned to moving folks to working remotely and really, in a lot of ways, operationally speaking, it has not skipped a beat. And same with our supply chain folks. So just like everyone else is doing, everyone is figuring out how to be creative and having a presence like an event like today. I heard earlier when I was on about, in many cases, we're actually getting greater visibility because people are able to participate virtually in events that they may not have been able to participate in the past. So a lot of that continues in a different format.
And 2 follow-up questions. How do people get information on those types of virtual networking, supplier relationship events?
Yeah. So what I'd suggest is to go to dominionenergy.com/suppliers, and I can put that in the chat, put that web address in the chat, but that's a good way of connecting with the company.
And then I just want to ask you again, the question that I asked Louise. So what do you need? What are you looking for a minority or a majority, anybody, what are you looking for?
I think a lot of it has already been said. And I mean, so one of the things that was talked about earlier is that, be focused in terms of what your core competency is. What exactly is it that you can provide? And Jimmy said, people aren't necessarily going to be able to take the time to weed through, some plethora of options to figure out how they can use you. And so that's one thing to be clear about what your core competencies are, and then to be effective in communicating what those core competencies are. And so I think that's an opportunity. I think the other thing is doing business with a large company. There's a degree of persistence that has to exist. You may not, we talked earlier, several folks have talked earlier about, and I won't go.
Oh. I think we lost her. Did we lose her? Yeah. All right. So I'm going to go to you, Dom, because I think Felicia is frozen. All right. So Dom, let me ask you over at Optus, are you providing any supplier diversity opportunities within your bank?
Can you hear me?
Oh, you froze up. We didn't hear you for a minute.
Okay, I could tell that when everybody else is freezing on the screen. I'm like, so my apologies for that.
Did your electricity go out over there in Dominion?
No, ma'am. No, it did not. It did not.
Just checking, girl. Just checking.
We've had some work done on our modem to make it speedier, and now it's less reliable. So
now it's Spectrum. Anyhow. Spectrum is the problem, right?
Yeah, I'm not going to point any fingers at anybody. Not point any fingers, but anyhow, I'm back now.
Yes,
So
we're so
I'll try
glad.
to, I think where I left off is I was talking about being persistent.
Yes.
Did you hear any of that?
Yes, we did. That was the last
Yeah.
thing we heard. Mhm.
Okay, so I just think it's important to be persistent. Well, I've had a conversation not too long ago myself with a small minority business owner who's seeking to do business in our company, and she found some connections in one part of the company, thinking that that would be parlayed into an opportunity elsewhere in the company, and it wasn't turning out that way because there are some cases, you know, big companies have different silos, I'll say. I know it's not a positive word, but there are different parts of the organization. An organization that's working, you know, if you're successful in the gas operations business, doesn't necessarily mean that's going to translate into the nuclear part of the business or the electric operations part of the business. And so you have to have really relationships with the organization, but it has to be matrix. It can't just sort of be up one chain of command and not, you know, across the organization. So I think there's a degree of persistence that needs to exist with that. And when, you know, there's times when folks will not find a match, you know, ask for feedback and be open to hearing that feedback and taking it to heart. You know, there's a phrase that we use at work that feedback is a gift. And sometimes that gift is not wrapped in pretty paper and what have you, doesn't have a nice bow on and all that, but ultimately the gift is the feedback itself. So I think a lot of times, you know, there's feedback that folks are offered, and so to take it to heart. So those are the things I would suggest.
Yeah, that's great to know, because we've got to be able to receive constructive criticism, you know, so that we can grow and learn and take it to the next level. So yeah, thank you so much. So Dom, I was asking you about Optus Bank and if you guys offer any supplier diversity opportunities.
Well, we have a really one of our core values is to live our values. So we try to do every part of our business in a way that aligns with our core values. And if we're true to our mission of trying to close the gaps, every aspect of our business will be aligned. So we've really challenged ourselves, both our hiring practices, our procurement practices, our lending practices, the implicit bias we talked about, really addressing all of those through every part of our lives. So just like I try to live my life, not just, you know, with my values being challenged on a Sunday morning, but really every day, every minute of the day. And so since I've been here, we've turned over a lot of our vendors to as many minority or women-owned companies as we could. In fact, the single largest contract we have at the bank is with a women-owned company, and we just couldn't find a minority-owned company because it's a very specialized banking service. But we sure tried. Everything from that to our insurance, to just the supplies, our signage, everything we do, we try to make sure we give a fair, equal opportunity, and of course, try to live those values. But more importantly, we want to make sure that all of our daily sort of activities are really sharply challenged on, are we actually closing the gap? And one thing Ron and I talked about this a while ago, what we have found is in the minority business space, a lot of our businesses just don't do business with each other. And so, you know, we're very actively involved with Black Pages and Darren Thomas. And one of the things he mentioned to me, you know, that's been a calling for him, and he's done a fantastic job lifting up those issues. But if you just imagine all those dollars revolving in our local communities more intentionally, what would this look like for us? And so that's what I would challenge everyone that's participating. You know, think about what you can do with your own dollars. You may be a small business. You may have an annual revenue of $1 million or less, but there's some spend there that could be directed intentionally. And I think we've heard this from both Dominion and BMW. It's not just necessarily that you're giving preference to a minority business. It actually makes your business stronger because you're broadening the base of support for your own company, but you also bring in diverse viewpoints and diverse companies, and intentionally revolving that dollar in a community that will hopefully come back and stay versus get shipped somewhere into a Wall Street firm. So that's kind of how we look at it. It's not just a one-off program. It's truly the way we live our personal and professional lives.
Thank you, Don. Dr. Griffin, I want to ask you the next question. I mean, as a small business, as a small large business or a large small business, I don't know which one you are, but can you share with other small businesses what steps they need to take to make sure that it has diversity and inclusion in its organization and is providing equity across all areas of its organization?
That's an excellent question. And first, I need to apologize because I had a 12:30 scheduled to actually, we are actually in the middle of an RFP. So every business owner, you understand what I'm about to say. So when I blacked my screen out, they said, oh, we just bumped your time up to 12 o'clock and it's between you and another firm. So if you see me disappear for just a few minutes, that is why. So Ron, I did not leave you. Erica, I did not. But in the famous words, if I was saying this professionally as an entrepreneur, we must collaborate to go after this particular client. Now, if I was in the street, we got to get this money.
I know that's right.
So, but to answer your question, Dream Builders has not always been this big. As a matter of fact, we really just grew in the last 5 years. This is 21 years of hard work, mistakes, and labor. So what did it look like in the very beginning? And I'll never forget that. And Jimmy said it. It was going to a lot of networking events. Dom just said it. From a faith perspective, for me, it was a lot of praying. And I don't mean praying without work. I had to pray and work. Right. So that meant I had to make some sacrifices Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, after 5, earlier than 4 o'clock in the morning. So it really put me in a position to remember what I had to do. So how do you do it? Number one, you have to ask yourself, do you really want it? And everybody's it is something different. Mm-hmm. Number two, you're going to have to put yourself in a position to understand what is your capacity to sacrifice? Do you stay up early or do you stay up late? Do you get up early? What are those things that you will do? Because if you suffer from analysis paralysis or the YZEL spelled backwards, which is lazy, you're going to put yourself in a position to not be where you say you want to be. A lot of people want to ride in a limousine, as Oprah Winfrey would say, but will you ride on the bus when my limo breaks? So what sacrifices are you going to make? The third thing is I had to get out of my ego. I wanted to walk around like I saw other businesses when I saw them show up. But what I didn't see is when they were in the lab working. Are you in the lab working, leaders? So I had to go in the lab and work. I had to reevaluate the website, but I had to build a website. There wasn't a website developer. I had to reevaluate the capability statement. Oops, I had to do that because there wasn't a team to do that. Then here was the final one, number 4. I had to take constructive criticism from people that would give it to me. As a result of that, those are the things that I believe for a small business, large business, or a corporation, you're going to have to really do to be successful.
Yeah, Kenson, thank you. Those 3, just to reiterate, find out how bad you want it. Do you really want it? Position yourself to sacrifice, and that looks different for everyone. And check your ego at the door. Make sure you're getting the work done. Felicia put in the chat the diversity supplier information from Dominion. So you guys check the chat for that. Thank you, Felicia, so much for sharing that information. I think, Erica, we've got, what, about 20 minutes left? Or how long? Because we didn't start till about 1:18. How much longer do we have?
I know we missed a question in here from Yolanda West. We can answer that question. So we got about 15 minutes.
Okay.
We can go into Q&A if anybody else have any other questions.
Sure. You want to take that question, and then if we don't have any more questions, I'll just continue to ask the questions. Thank you.
Okay. It said, can someone speak on obtaining good credit scores for your business or for insurances, for your business and insurance for employees with 5 or more?
Anyone?
With 5 or more employees.
Can anyone speak to credit scores?
And I can share with you. Yeah. I can share with you real quick. We get this question all the time. What about your business versus your personal credit? And the answer for us is to us, we look at global. What we mean by global, we look at both. Because we have had this happen with some businesses come in and say, well, I have an excellent business score, But personally, I have bankruptcy, I have something else on my record. And so, but it could be vice versa, right? So they could have no business credit score, but excellent personal history. So what we really look at as a values-based organization, we try to look beyond the numbers. We try to understand really what's going on with that person. And we have people with great credit histories, but they have a medical collection issue. So we try to discount it. So, and we have some people who show up with 780 credit score. When we find out there's a bankruptcy that was 3 years ago where they walked away from a bunch of debt at another institution. So credit scores to us are just one small indicator. It's one of the 5 C's of lending, but even under that C, you still have to look a little bit deeper and see the person and understand their history, and not just use a credit box, which one of the questions you shared, I wanted to comment quickly before that was on our planning meeting, is, how important it is to have relationships. And a lot of people, great comments from Ron and others on relationships. But ultimately, a lot of the ways that we can close these gaps we see are to not use a standard credit box, standard set of criteria that may not apply, because we have to keep in mind that those criteria were designed in a systemically biased world. So they're inherently biased. In fact, every way of lending is inherently biased. It has historical disadvantages almost built into them. And so in order to overcome it, we have to look beyond it, and we have to paint a better picture of truly, is the credit score the only way? Now, I will say this too, to contradict myself a little bit. If you want to be competitive in the mainstream world, you have to pay attention to those scores, because not everyone is going to take the time like we do or some other companies do to get to know you beyond that number. So you really have to make sure you maintain it, you manage it, you're careful with it, because it could really set you back unfairly. And most people don't think that that's something that's going to drive their business success. But those of us that have been small business owners, that's the difference between success and failure. Frequently could be 5 points.
Wow. Thank you, John. Jimmy, let me ask you, what does inclusion mean to you as a small minority business owner?
Well, that's a very, very philosophical question. I will try to answer that. In the beginning, I think the inclusion means opportunity for me to pursue my dream, because I worked in the beginning for a very large engineering company. I quickly find out I'm reaching the end of my, I should say, the future. So I can go, I've been as high as I can be in that huge structure for whatever reason. And so by starting my own business with the help with the inclusion, give me opportunity to pursue my dream, because I just feel like I have so much to give, but I couldn't do it because I'm in the big structure. But now, I'm getting a whole lot more mature, and the inclusion, not only just opportunity, it goes much, much more beyond that. It's become, to me, it's a belief. I think that's the future for our nation as a whole. If we want to have a healthy community, you want to have a healthy nation, we have to go to the inclusion, because it doesn't matter which facet of the people, if they are not fairly represented in our modern life, those people are eventually, they're going to rise up. They are going to rebel it. And as you can see, the current things going on, the Black Lives Matter is a typical example of that. So doesn't matter you want to do or not, we got to be fairly represented by all the facets of life. And therefore, I'm really, I want to applaud to Louise for BMW and Felicia for the Dominion. It doesn't matter what are you doing this inclusion because of you think the right thing to do, or think you just think you're under the compliance requirement. It doesn't matter. It all helps, because you are helping building our very, very the modern and sustainable community that we can all happily fit in together. So thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you, Jimmy. I want to follow up with another question, but I want to invite everyone who is participating on the webinar today. Please feel free, if you do have a question for any of our panelists, to put your question in the chat, and we will acknowledge you and answer your question. So, Jimmy, you talked a lot about what your experience has been as a small minority business owner. Now, what about in your company? Are there opportunities for other minority vendors, businesses within your company?
We definitely are very, very sensitive to these issues. Whenever I can, I always seeking out for the minority vendors, to partner with us. Not only that, for the employment, we also will try to reach out, to minority, the group, and so they can be, have opportunity to grow. And so just like any other minority company, our company and the minority are the high percentage. We're over, the 30% are minority groups. So I think everybody has already talking about that. If we do not care about ourselves, then we are just kidding ourselves, because if we don't care, who else will care?
Yeah. Are there current opportunities for minority vendors at your company?
We are currently we don't have opportunity, but as I mentioned, there's very, very seldom we have ongoing business. We always have to compete whenever there's opportunity comes. So if there's a procurement opportunity, then we need to form a team. Or if we need have several team members to be able to pursue that opportunity. But that's all really depends on what is coming to us. So
okay. Thank you so much. Felicia, I want to go to you and ask, you've been at Dominion some 25 years, and I know you probably didn't start as VP of gas, but I want to ask, as an African-American woman, now at the executive level, what advice would you share about how to effectively navigate the corporate space, moving up that corporate ladder?
Sure. Well, I think I guess the thing that comes to mind for me initially is years ago, I was exposed to the PI formula. If anyone who's listening is aware of that, performance, image, and exposure. And even before I knew that's what I was kind of employing, that was kind of what I was employing. First, Jimmy, you talked about you got to get the job done. That's the first thing. No one wants to hire anybody of any background who's incompetent, right? So that's the first thing, is that you have to have the core competency to work effectively. Years ago, a vice president at the company told me that we weren't running a social service, we were running a for-profit business. And so our goal was to hire the best person for the job. So that's the first part of it, is that you have to perform. But then the other part of it is, I think that you have to be aware of how other people receive you, be aware of the image that other people have of you. And sometimes that's difficult to understand what that is, because what you think it is, maybe how you're being perceived could be very different than how you're being perceived. And so you have to seek feedback from people and check in with other folks to understand, what is that. And I think sometimes also it helps to, seek a variety of opinions, not just the folks who are in your corner and supporting your every move, but some people who maybe not so big of fans type of thing. And so, because again, feedback is a gift, and it helps you to understand how to grow and to push yourself. And the other piece of it is just that exposure piece. And when I think about exposure for me, I think about it in two ways. One is exposure for myself, so that kind of my philosophy of things is, if you ask me to do something, most times I'm going to say yes, because I look at it as an opportunity to grow. It's an opportunity for me to learn something else. The times that I will, flat out refuse to do something are very few and far between, unfortunately, sometimes, because I can find myself in a lot of situations. But I'm always interested in learning the next thing, and it helps me to gain exposure to other people, opportunities, areas of influence, just to always be open-minded and open to learning. And then the other piece of it is that, if you're the best thing since sliced bread and nobody knows it, then it's kind of a well hidden secret. And so I think you have to be kind of like we've talked about earlier today with the doing business in a large corporation. You have to understand what your core competencies are and where you can perform well. And then you have to really seek to put yourself in positions where it can get noticed. If a tree falls in the woods, doesn't make a sound. So, so I think those are some of the things that, have helped me. I also work on developing relationships across the organization. And, in 25 years, you have an opportunity to get to know a lot of people. And but I've been focused on getting to know people, and not in a way where it's, because I'm opportunistically trying to look around for who I can chat up the next time, but genuinely understanding what people are about. I genuinely have an interest in people, and wanting to know, kind of what makes them tick, how I can help them, that type of thing. I'm concerned a lot about how to develop other people in my role, even in roles when I have not been the leader of the organization, been very concerned about how to help other people develop.
Thank you, Felicia. We're going to wrap up in about 15 minutes, but I do have a couple more questions for you, Dom. And Kinston is back. Did we get the contract?
They told me that they were delayed, so I came back. So, hey, I think what they're doing is another group trying to do it at the same time. So I feel sorry for the other competitive company.
I know that's right. Confident. You better be confident over there, building dreams. Listen, Kinston, as CEO of our Dream Builders, how important is it to take care of you, your business, and your team for longevity?
Super, super important. The first thing that I do, and I don't want to say it without modeling, what I do is every morning I wake up. Obviously, for me, I'm a man of faith, so I'm very thankful that I got a chance to wake up in my right mind. And then I do some form of stretching, and then I work out. I work out 5 days out of the week, but working out is only one component of it. While I'm working out, I do not answer my cell phone. It's got to be a complete emergency for me to answer that phone during that time. Within that time frame, then I'm really looking at my schedule. And then it's going to sound kind of corny, but who on my team can I take care of today? Whether it's sending them a little note, and I'll show you, ladies and gentlemen, an example of one of my little notes, but it's a little note, and this is what it says.
Oh.
It's just thanks, and I'll do a personal handwritten note inside of what that is, and just really tell them thank you. If it's bringing in lunch, we try to do lunch once a month. I know other people's budgets are bigger than mine, but all I can do is once a month. And that's with our entire executive team, just to where we can brainstorm. But the final piece I'll say to that is you've got to mentally take care of yourself. You've got to get away from your business, because so many of us are working on the business and in the business. You're not working on yourself so you can be better at business.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, you take care of the people who take care of you. Definitely. Dominique, if I can ask you about gaining access for small businesses, financial asset access for capital. How can a small business owner access capital? And how important is that to know for a banker?
Well, the relationships, we've talked about that, those are really important. So establish a relationship with a small, locally accountable institution early on in your career is critical, because then when you need that relationship, you can call on someone and you're not shopping around. So that's one. I mean, that's a no-brainer for anyone. Even if you're in an early venture stage, you're just raising the friends and family money to start your business. You're not necessarily credit worthy for a traditional financial institution of any kind. but start the banking relationship with someone that can then help you. I will say one thing with the tragic outcomes of the pandemic for minority businesses. There has been an awakening and realization that people that thought they were banked for years and years finally realized they're not really banked, because they couldn't even get a hold of their banker to help them with their PPP loan after knowing them for 20 years. So they suddenly realized this big bank that has all this fancy stuff that we all enjoy doesn't have a single person I can actually call. So do you have a cell phone banker, or do you have a 1-800 number banker?
Mm-hmm.
Which one do you have? So I'd start there. Two, I would definitely reach out to there's so many great resources, both the county and the city. There are a lot of minority business development center, women business development centers. So there's a lot of, on the credit spectrum, there's a lot of credit that's needed at early stage, but that's not necessarily bank loans. That's the friends and family money, the seed money, the angel money, and then it goes up to more traditional sources of capital. The SBA, we do a lot of small business startup loans with the SBA. There are a lot of SBA micro loans available. So those are the types of credit, but they're a little bit later stage. So, but I would always find someone who has personal accountability to you, their community, and your effort, and shares in your efforts, because they will go the extra mile. They will find your resources. And I'll close this part with we frequently, like I mentioned, are unable to help everyone that comes through the door, but we always try to find some resources for them. We always try to make sure that they leave better off. So if I have that personal accountability, I want to see that minority business succeed. I'm going to make sure they get some help, even if a traditional bank maybe later on in their credit needs.
Yeah. Mr. Chow, can you leave us with a brief closing statement? You're on mute.
Thank you. You're so smart. I was about to spill my heart out, but nobody responded to me. But thank you. Well, this is very, very important topic. As I said, I truly believe the inclusion of a diversified the community is a community of healthy community. We got to achieve that one way or the other. We can go through the right way, or we can do the hard way. And so I want to encourage every small business, especially minority business, do not give up. Make sure you do your homework. Make sure you prepare you can survive, and then you can once you get an opportunity, do the best you can. Don't make excuse. Get the job done so we can all benefit from that.
Yeah.
And since we are on the Richland County SLBE, I encourage everybody to get certified, because that is very, very important. I appreciate that you raised your both on the. But again, I want to make sure everybody understand. Getting a certification, that's not end of the job. That's just the beginning. It's a hunting license. It gives you an opportunity to go to hunt. You still need to go to hunt. So a lot of people think they just get certified and the money project will fall on their lap. No, you still have to work it. Networking, go out to see people, to pay a visit to Felicia, to pay to Louise, so you can get in front of them, so you can get the job.
Yeah, thank you so much. We appreciate you, Mr. Chow. And Felicia, final words, please.
Sure, thank you. Well, I've enjoyed being part of the panel, and so I appreciate the opportunity to join everyone this morning. I would just, in terms of concluding comments, I would just add that Dominion Energy is very much committed to having diverse suppliers, and so please reach out on the share two sites actually. So one for connecting with the supplier, and then the sustainability report, which will give you some additional insight into the kinds of inroads that the company is making with diverse suppliers. So just want to encourage folks, again, sort of like Jimmy was saying, to be persistent, to continue to make your way to expand your network, and to make sure that people understand what it is that you offer. And sometimes, you plant a seed, and the seed takes a while to bloom, right? The seed takes a while to grow but each time, each opportunity is an opportunity to plant a seed. And so make sure that you're doing that work to plant the seed.
Can you give your contact information, Felicia, and then you, Jimmy,
Sure.
and then you, Don?
Sure. I'll put it in my.
You're going to put it in the chat?
Yes.
Okay. And then Dom and Jimmy, if you guys can put your contact information in the chat also. And Dom, if you didn't have any final words, did you have anything else to say?
No, I'm just grateful for this opportunity and for the terrific panel, and appreciate so much for y'all doing this and being so candid and honest. Thank you.
Yeah. On behalf of Dom and Jimmy, also Felicia and Kinston and Louise in their absence, and of course, the Richland County Office of Small Business Opportunity, I'm Trey Taylor, and I'm also grateful for the opportunity to be here with you. We hope and trust and believe that you've gotten some great nuggets from this conversation this morning. If you have listened and you have heard and you have taken notes and really taken to heart what these ladies and gentlemen have told you, I trust and believe that even in the midst of a pandemic, you can take your business, your life, your company to the next level. It's up to you to do the work, but you can do it. Again, my name is Trey Taylor. I'm going to give it now to the director of this incredible department, Ms. Chris Kiefer. Thank you so much. She's going to leave us with some final words.
Yes, thank you very much, Trey. And I want to thank everybody who was part of this today, the panelists and keynote speakers. We appreciate you. You spoke from the heart and were very candid and honest and open with us all, and I appreciate that. I also want to thank everybody who was on the call participating. You hung in there with us for 2.5 hours, but Trey said, I know y'all are going to walk out of here with lots of good nuggets. I know I have 12 pages of notes that I'll key takeaways myself. And I want to thank the OSBO staff, Erica, Michelle, Cheryl, and Margaret, and my GCS staff for being on the call too, as our moral support and backup, and all the county staff. I know there's a few folks too who were in and out on the call, but I think all these efforts collectively, just like if we're as individual businesses, if we all work collectively, success is the end game. We can do it. So if there is any way that OSBO or any of us here can help you connect with each other and succeed, we are here for you. And I will leave it with that.
All right. You guys go get something good to eat and have a great afternoon. Erica, did you want to say something?
Once again, I just want to say thank you to everybody. Thank you to Global Core Consulting Strategies for assisting us. Thank you to you, Trey. You did an excellent job.
Thank you.
Handlers, Ron, and all Colette. I think Colette, she may have gotten off, but I will still send her a special thank you. And to you, our small business owners, thank you for supporting this. Thank you for sticking with us for this 2.5 hours. And I hope you had some good takeaways from this event. Keep in touch. We'll be sending you more information on future workshops and trainings that we have. And OSBO, that is part of our mission, is to, have these types of trainings to ensure that our small business community, that they have the tools as necessary to be able to, go after these contracts, not necessarily just in Richland County, but anywhere. So that being said, thank you so much for joining. We will be sending out a Survey Monkey. We would really, really love to get your feedback to let us know how we did today. So with that being said, thank you to everybody and good afternoon.
Bye-bye.